So a couple of housekeeping notes. We don't know how this is going to go, but we're going to shoot for about an hour. We're going to talk about how things have changed, and we got about, well, we got a lot of years up here. See, I'm in trouble already. And then afterwards, we get done here in an hour or so, we'll open it up for question and answer, and then at that point, we got some refreshments over here so people can get up and mill around, and we'll have a little informal question and answer period. So, a couple of notes about the organization. Scarecrow Fest coming up next weekend, and the museum will be open. And Luella was just telling me, in fact, that she's got 21 third graders coming in here this coming week to check out what's up in that museum. So the work the historical folks are doing here in this town is tremendous. So we're gonna start it off here, and there's any number of formats you can do when you do these things, and we're gonna see how it goes. So, and we've only got one microphone, so hopefully it won't be too cumbersome to pass that around. All right, so we have, not that they need any introduction, Bill Shores, Robert Messer, Russ Deane. So, we're going to start it up. A lot of things have changed in the years that they've lived in this town. And I know Russ had a couple of thoughts that he wanted to start off with.
Well, that's a little bit of a change from what I thought was going to happen. I don't really know where he wants me to start, but a lot of the changes you've all seen yourself. But one I want to really touch on a little bit was how 91 changed the town and split it in half. Took away some of the most valuable farming land there was, and drove out a lot of things that would have proceeded, and particularly the farmers. And I've only named a few here, and I think it's 23 different farms that used to produce milk and sell milk to the industry. And that didn't even include the farmers that had their own cow, just the guy having their own milk around. And I think that someday we all ought to start thinking about, we're going to be hungry in this country. We've been trying to feed all the other countries, and I think one of these days it's going to turn around. And like just the other day in the store, probably you've noticed it years ago, but his milk shipped in here from California. Wow. Signed California, produced in California, and now Coke from Texas, when we got a plant right down here. Those things have changed since I come along here. You want to see that? Plus, I think Bob may talk about our airport that used to be down on the airport farm down there, the other side of the creamy shed. Or the ski tow up back to the four-leaf clover. There used to be a ski tow up there, rope tow, that has gone down the road a ways. And another thing to think about is what the town lost when it lost street or store. You could go in there and you could buy your shoes, you could buy a cow if you wanted to, you could buy a tractor, you could buy anything you wanted to, from clothes, soup to nuts. Now we're down the road.
And you can get the gossip.
And all I had to do was find Jamie. You haven't got the gossip. But you know, you heard a lot of stories about street or store. This is not really what's happened in town, but the point I think that you could make out how people change, not only the community and everything that happens in their technology and that, but everybody's heard stories about Harold Streeter, about how he was and how he dealt with people all around. But I want to tell you a deal that happened to me with him one time. I just got married and we wanted to build a house, and he owned a piece of land we wanted. And so I went to him and he says, yeah, I'll sell you that land. I said, what do you want for it? He said, $500. Well, that's not bad. I said, but I don't have $500. He says, can you pay me $50 a month? And I said, how about 25? He said, all right, 25. And so It went along about 2 months and I paid him and he says to me, "You started your house yet?" And I said, "No, I haven't started my house yet." And he said, "Why not?" I said, "Well, the bank won't loan me any money until I got a deed to my land. And I can't get that until I get it paid for." "Well," he says, "you gonna pay me?" And I said, "Of course I'm gonna pay you." "Okay, then I'll give you the deed." And then a couple weeks later, he gave me the deed. Where you gonna find somebody to do that today?
Now, talk a little bit about that airport farm you were talking about, because that was something even I didn't know about.
Well, this is something I got from Lou later on. The airport farm originated through what we call Daredevil Daniels. He was a pilot in World War I, and it was prominent down on the other side of Route 5, where in the area now where the Creamy is. There's a road there that used to go across Hales Crossing, past George Townsend's Texaco gas station, and then join Route 5 around what they call Yetter's Curve there. The airport farm lasted probably from along about 1930 to about 1935, or even perhaps later than that. And then,
Get that mic a little closer.
oh, then they just abandoned it, left the airport farm there, which they still call the airport farm, I guess. Well, this particular area was looked at by General Motors, and they wanted to build an automotive factory place there, which instead ended up down in Framingham. Now, just think what this area could have accomplished and done as a labor source, and right here in Bernardston with the business right there. Well, that's just something that might be of interest. The town of Greenfield turned it down, of course, because it would have taken the labor pool from GTD, Wells Manufacturing, Mills Falls Tool Company, and those particular projects. I guess probably that's what you wanted to know about first. Well, one thing that I would like to mention.
Well, angle that mic in a little more towards you. Hold it a little bit of an angle.
Oh, here's the thing right here. Okay, I don't know if it's on or not.
Oh, it's on, but I'm just trying to get you to
Okay.
angle a little bit like that.
Okay. Not used to using the microphone. Generally, I can talk loud enough so everybody will hear me. That was the beginning of pretty much. I was down to up to about 15 minutes, but Russ has mentioned a couple things already, which I might expound on. They did have a ski tow up on what is Slate's property in that area up on West Mountain, and my brother did the long splice because he was a bosun mate and knew how to make it. I can do one too, but that was necessary to do the tow. That didn't last very long. And of course I would mention that the water supply originally might have been bought in Greenfield, but instead of that, the town built the system itself, including the well along about, I can remember going by the house when I lived down by what used to be Knutsen's gas station, Gulf Gas. And then Dick Phelps, I guess, bought it and lived there for a while. We lived there for quite a while also. And we went to South Street School, which was just down the road. Oh, I should mention that because of Prohibition, Route 5 was a necessary and busy place to supply the Hoover's prohibitionary area with liquor, which they were bound to get anyway, whether we had prohibition or not. So they shipped it, they brought it down from Canada, and the inn was kind of a focal point because you've got Route 2, you've got Route 10, you've got Route 5, and you got people willing to come up from the cities to pick it up, and the Bernardston Inn was kind of a good place to do it.
Sure. Now, Bob,
You're older than the rest of us, so you remember that.
Yeah, I was delivering papers there during the hurricane in 1938.
Now, Bob, I got a question for you, and I know Bill wants to talk about that hurricane of '38.
Okay.
But I want to ask you for a minute. You all went to school here at this place.
Right.
And most people in this room have heard of Adam Harrington and the great basketball teams they had at Pioneer. But in 1939 and 1940, I believe we had an undefeated basketball team here, and Bob Messer was on it. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Okay. All right, well, we weren't undefeated. I think it was 14-2. The reason I can say that, because in the Penomeco, Butch Keller, our 6'3", 300-pound principal, would take you by the back of the neck, pick you up out of your chair with one hand, and shake you, and then set you back down again.
Now, who were some of the guys that played on that team?
Okay, there was, you don't know him, but Eddie Warden, Eddie Snow, Huey Carnes, Bill, my brother, who was team captain, and myself, and then Bobby Kratz played, and I can remember Ernie Streeter had a uniform also. I don't think he was able to play that much because he was working on the farm most of the time, unfortunately.
Well, Whitey Streeter played on that team too, right?
No. Who's that?
Whitey Streeter.
No. Whitey Streeter was in school for 100 years. Well, that's true, probably because he entertained most of the teachers. And he was in school, yes, when I was, but you gotta remember, Whitey's about 4, 5, or 6 years older than I am.
That's right.
But he went to school for about 20 years.
Alan Shedd was on that team, weren't he?
No, Dick Shedd was on the one before that, with Cliff Grover and my brother and 2 or 3 other guys I can't think of now.
But it was a good team.
Yeah. Fine.
Bill Messer said that my dad was his protector because Bill was kind of scrawny. And Bill says, I'd get out there and I'd get in trouble and your dad would defend me. And I guess he never forgot that. But Robert mentioned the '38 hurricane, and I know that Bill's got a few words to say about that.
Sit down.
You don't need to stand up.
I want to talk about the '38 hurricane that it came after several days of rain. We never had any idea that a hurricane was coming, and there was one that was coming up the coast and it went out to sea. But this one apparently turned around and came back in and went up through the Connecticut River Valley. And that was something that never happened before. And first we knew about it was that a car from Connecticut came in the yard and had one of these dewdrop trailers on behind it, sleep tube, and they wanted to stay in the yard until the storm was over with because limbs were starting to fall on the road, and they figured it was safe to be parked somewhere. And then the egg truck came, and he hauled, put 2 or 3 cases of eggs on, and we asked him to stay until the storm was over with. And he said, no, I gotta get the eggs back to Springfield. So, he was coming up by where the four-leaf clover is now, up the hill, and there was a whole row of pines there. And one pine just went right down across the hood of his truck, and it was still in Livermore's garage for 3 weeks or more, so it did damage or something. But we thought that was kind of, you know, the rest of the day was, wind was blowing and it was rain, and then it let up, and that was, we thought it was over with. And my father and I walked across the bridge over to the other side of the Fall River, where we had chickens out on the range. And I remember coming down onto it, and all the rain shelters were crushed up and floated off, and chickens everywhere, dead. And particularly in the fence. Apparently they tried to get through the fence and got their heads caught. And there was, the whole fence was full of dead chickens. You just couldn't believe it.
So Bill, you said that you were unaware that this hurricane was creeping up on you, is that
No,
correct?
we still didn't
Yeah.
think much of it, you know. And so I know my father just turned around and we walked back. And we started back and it started raining again. And then the wind really blew. And so we were inside, my brother and sister and myself. And we were watching from the living room window the trees across the street, big maples. And they'd go down and then come back. And then they'd go down a little further and then come back. And we bet this, he won't come back this time. You go down, no, then boom, gone. And the tree, and that's what it went all afternoon. We watched these trees going down from our living room window. And so the next day, there was 10 trees down between our house and the tavern that was across Route 5. And so the road was completely blocked for days. And in those days, because they had no chainsaws in the old crosscut, and it took about 20 minutes to make one cut down through the tree. And I know they rolled the stumps, the chunks of wood, and took it over and they dumped it in the bank on the river. But that was the real problem was afterwards. And I don't know whether you want to talk about after the hurricane, because there were so many trees down around and so much lumber trying to be saved that the pines, this was in the fall year, so the pine beetles hadn't started until June of next year. And they wanted to get as much pine sawed up and made into lumber before the beetles came. And they floated these logs into the ponds. Around all the ponds had logs in them. But they set up down at the airport farm, across the end, they set up where they brought in 2 government sawmills from Virginia. And they came in and they sawed lumber 24 hours a day. And the stack of logs was, it was 10 feet or more. that was there.
Now, where did that lumber go? Did it go somewhere? Did it stay in town, or?
No, it disappeared anyways. I had no idea. The government took it. I don't know whether such an influx of lumber
Right.
like that, but it was, everything else was flat. I mean, you realize that the brochure I got here on the hurricane of '38, put out in orange, it doesn't have any Franklin County particular thing, but it was the same idea. I mean, trees were everywhere. We had a tree on our house, on the north side, and it was the way it was. And the logs, people bringing in the trucks are small trucks compared to what we got today. And the tires are just barely touching the ground, the front tires, as they brought the logs in down at the
Pretty heavy then.
yeah.
Well, that was 1938, and of course, after 1938, shortly after, World War II started. And I just wonder if anybody's got any thoughts about what was going on in town. What was it like to live here in town during the war?
Well,
I don't know.
You weren't here. You were in the war.
we were lucky in that we raised our own. We had our chickens and everything like that, but I know when we sold chickens, we had to get coupons from the guy so we could turn them in. Otherwise,
Yep.
but we had to have coupons for everything. And one of the things that got my father was that he always wanted to do just right and be there. And it turned out that everybody else was paying extra, collecting cash, and so on and so forth. It was ration, everything was rationed, sugar, meats, and things like that.
Bob, can you talk, are you willing to talk a little bit about what you were doing during the war? Where you were?
First off, I'd like to mention what I was doing during the hurricane.
That's fine too. Yep.
I was delivering papers on South Street, Recorder Gazette. And finally I decided, because I couldn't ride my bicycle anymore, the trees, because of the high water mark, the trees just plain blew over because the roots didn't have anything to keep them up. And South Street was just full of trees, which it isn't anymore. So I was coming up and I had to abandon the paper route, and my grandfather's house is used to be on the corner there, Grandfather Messer. And so I just took off and went down over into it was then an area that we used to hay, and last time they hayed it, I guess Whitey Streeter did it. We helped him. But it belonged to Nelson's, where they call it, was it the Swamp now? That's a band that's owned by the state, I guess. Well, I just took my bicycle and went down across there and went up to the gas station, Shike's gas station. This was just about during the eye of the hurricane. And we stood there and watched the barn blow off from Streeter's farm, the roof. And my brother Bill was working in the barn at the time that it blew off. I thought that might be interesting. Anyways, as far as
I think Ernie was in that barn with your brother.
Were you
At
in
the
the
time
Bill?
the roof
I was
blew.
in the barn.
Yeah.
Hand milking cows in.
But you've heard a lot of war stories, and I don't want to talk about my being aboard ship and made 4 trips across the Mediterranean and all that jazz, and then they decided I'd better go over to the Pacific. went through the canal 3 times during my course. And got there in time to spend a lot of time where we made the invasion of Okinawa, which wasn't any fun. And then I went back to Guam and stayed there until I got discharged. I was in from December of 42 until February of 46. Yes.
Now, I've heard, and I think it must be true, that we actually had air raid wardens here in town where we would watch for fighters coming over or whatever.
Yeah, I can remember that before I went. They had, were concerned about air raids, which never happened, naturally. And so Fred Donaldson's had a air raid little circular gondola trike building, or I don't know about circular, platform raised and so undercover, right up there by the Ryder House. And apparently quite a few people stayed there at different times for quite a while until they figured out that maybe there weren't going to be any airplanes.
Russ,
Yes.
what do you got?
about the hurricane?
All I remember, well, I remember about the hurricane, but I was walking home from elementary school over by Dick Shedd's Road, and we lived down on the Four Corners there by the Gill Road. And I was walking home because my aunt was supposed to come pick me up because it was raining so hard and the wind blowing. Well, the trees were down on that one road she tried to go on, and another one came down behind her, and she was quite a while getting turned around to come around and get me. And I had gone the other way and was going down through Benton Hale's mowing over by Ralph Deane's when she finally got turned around and come around and picked me up. And they were kind of, I guess, they were more worried than I was because I was still going. There's a couple other kids with me. We done that. And that's another thing about how we saw on those guys too, but which jumping guns I am on you, but there was 4 elementary schools here. Then when they was closing them and going to put us all together, bring us over here into Pioneer, the whole town was up in arms because you couldn't mix the young kids in with the older kids all at that time because it's going to be quite a change. And then of course when Pioneer came, they closed this place here, and that made everything a whole lot better. But,
Russ, where were those 4 schools? There was one at the end of my road.
one in the Shedd School, and there's one down on South Street. There's one where the Vets Club is now,
Okay.
and there was one up North Bernardston, or I never quite myself found out where that one was. Bill probably has to tell you where that one was.
And they were all ages, and there was one teacher, or was there more than one teacher, or?
One teacher in each building, and they taught 6 classes. Most of them over in East Bernardston, you had about 5 kids in each class, 5 or 6 kids in each class, generally.
Now that one at the end of Martindale Road was moved over to Pioneer, but I don't think it's there anymore.
No, I believe they took it down. Kiwanis moved it over, they was gonna make it into some kind of a thing, but it never worked out, I guess. And, you want me to keep jumping around?
Jump around all you want.
Another thing that was in town here that I knew very little about, but up, well, Dexter Nelson ended up owning it, but they used to make slate for your cemeteries, those stones over in the cemetery. There was a lot of slate that came out of there, and they'd take it out and of course engrave it, same as that, but it was right here in town. And apparently, some reason or other, got too expensive to bring it out because they stopped doing it. And that was another industry we had here that kind of went down it too, but they're still doing them. I guess granite and marble took it over anyway because of that.
Now, how was that viewed when they closed this place and everybody went to Pioneer? Did people view that as a positive thing, or was that something they didn't like?
As I remember it, they didn't like it because any town ought to have its own school. Or if you didn't have your own school in it, it was gonna be terrible. Nobody would wanna move into that. I remember, I think there were selectmen at the time it was going on, and there were a lot of objections to it,
But it all worked out.
it all worked out.
How about some of the public service things like the fire department and police department? How has that changed over the years?
Did I mention the school?
Go right for it.
They closed this place down as far as using it for a lot of things, and because, and put a restriction on it that they couldn't have more than 50 people in any of the one rooms. I've still got a certificate of, from the public health department at home that I found when the Boy Scouts were using it down in the cellar where we used to have a furnace. But what I'd like to mention was that the last 2 years that we played ball and the year that we had a pretty good club, one of the reasons was we could outrun any team in the country because we played our basketball over in Mount Herman Gymnasium. They wouldn't let us use the town hall. But that's where they had, wouldn't let anybody up in the upper part where we used to play. Yeah, I just thought I'd mention that.
Well, yes, and you were generally playing in old town halls like that, right? In general?
Oh, yeah.
The size of this room.
Right.
Yeah, and some of them even like the ones down in Williamsburg.
Irving, I remember.
Well, we didn't play, we played better teams. But anyway, the one down it's the old Franklin County League, and one down in Williamsburg, they had stoves, pot-bellied stoves in the corner, and they had pipes overhead to hold the building together or something. It was still bigger than the town hall. But one of the favorite tricks down there was to get you over near the stove and push it against it.
And back then, there were girls' teams too? Did they have a girls' basketball
The
team?
girls had a wonderful basketball team. Lillian was one of their better players. Well, that was on the town team, really, because Lukey Taft was probably one of the best players around. And they also had, but back when I was young, to begin with, they had a town team in Bernardston. And they had, at the time, they had center jump after every shot. So the scores generally weren't much higher than 15, 16 points because it took time. But we did have the first area that they played baseball in was down on, well, now it would be Pratt Field. And they had a good town team, but this was back when I was a little boy, say in the 20s. And then of course, if you want to know about the ball team, we built, the town built, and we built when Butch Keller was here, and Ernie probably played on it with us, is right across from the depot, down over the bank past where Jewett had their barrels full of pickles. We built the field there and played on it for quite a few years. I guess it's abandoned now, I don't know. Yeah, what you want to add to that?
No, I want to add to that girls' basketball team, okay? It was a town team, and they were called the Bomberettes. And we was similar to the team that he was talking about that the men had. I know this because I was a coach and my wife was one of the players. And I see one of the girls right here today that played on it, Isabel Grover right there. She was on that team, and there's quite a bunch of us. And the only trouble with the whole thing was we had one team we could never beat. And we would for 3 years in a row, we had 19 wins and 1 loss, and every time we lose to North Adams over there. We couldn't beat them, we'd always lose by about 4 or 5 points. They were a very good team, but they, just like the rest of us, they got older.
So, Bill, we're gonna come back with an answer, question and answer for you. But there's a great picture of the Bernardston Bomberettes, and it's probably in this building. And, I
They were
think,
called the blonde bombshells.
yeah. So, when you're around checking out the museum, there's a great picture of it. Go ahead, Bill.
All right. I want to get back to the World War II.
Yep.
The Bernardston Inn and Donaldson's Antique Shop had on the top of the roof, big inn with arrows pointing. And that was one thing that they had to take off the cover because they didn't want the enemy coming through with the airplanes. They didn't want them to get straightened around with where they are. So that was one thing that, you know, I mean, it was all cleaned off, and so that there was no indication at all. And by then, the airport down there was pretty well closed. And so that was one thing. There was another time that they had to build a little building for the air raid spotters. And if you, I was a spotter there during the afternoon, and if you heard an airplane coming, you could tell it was 1 engine or 2 or 4 or whatever, and you had to report that in. And it was quite a system, because they set out